Hey everybody, this is Perch, and this video was a little bit less about comics, but I think comics plays into it. It's a viewer question, but it's talking more about these feelings of nostalgia, these feelings of embracing what was happening in the past. Why are people doing this? Well, it will take a big therapist to figure that one out, but let's at least take a stab at some of this and how it relates to comics. And because I think in some cases comics was a little bit of a canary in the coal mine that this was coming in popular media, and I'll explain why in a moment. So here's the mail. It goes, "Hey Perch, I'm asking you, and in turn hoping you turn this into a video that'll spur a greater discussion. Have you noticed people over the last year or so suddenly talking about and embracing older movies, even the absolute crap? I've seen threads on Reddit and Twitter of people connecting over love of things like Godzilla 1999, The Phantom Menace, Blade Trinity, and the Fantastic Four movies, the bad ones, and a range of other random crapola films from about 1995 to 2005. Have you noticed this, or am I just seeing things? Absolutely, I've noticed this, and it's definitely going on. So no doubt about it. There is this sudden kind of weird nostalgia for some of the absolute worst films that are known to man. And I mentioned this a while back. I mentioned that there's this love suddenly for Batman and Robin with Clooney, and I got people are like, oh bullshit, but make no mistake about it. You go on Reddit, there's these people who are like, oh man, that was such a good film. I remember the good old days, and it's pure nostalgia. What's going on here is people are remembering things from when they didn't have terrible worries. You're in high school and you watch some of this garbage and it wasn't good. You didn't enjoy yourself, but you know what you didn't have? You didn't have a crushing job or student loan debt or children. And you're like, man, that was hell of a lot easier back in those time periods because it was. And so I think that mostly what's going on here is a people expressing a fondness for times when life wasn't so shitty. And so that's what you're getting. Because the reality is, if you actually sit down and watch some of these films, they're terrible. Now you might be able to get some kind of ironic humor in these films and these books and these things, but in general, you still know, like Godzilla '99. Come on, that was absolutely a crappy movie. We'll go back. We'll go back to some of this. Anyway, finishing up the mail, it says, I have a theory that some people are just happy with the charm that this era of movies had, when it felt like there was more fun and optimism in movies and very little culture warring, though I may be in a bubble confirming my own biases. Also, how many Nick Cage movies have you shown the family, and what do they think? Um, so, two questions. So, first of all, Nick Cage. I haven't shown many Nick Cage films to my kids. They've seen a bunch, but they're just like, they have no interest in this stuff. I've shown them to my wife, of course, and both of us grew up watching a lot of Nick Cage movies. And I think where I find, I'm my own bias here, where I find those things charming and fun, she's like, but he's a terrible actor. Like, I don't understand, like, why do you want to go see this film? What was the one recently? It's where he was a truffle farmer and then he goes on revenge because somebody steals his pig, but not really. And I'm watching this movie. I'm like, well, this is a Nick Cage movie. And my wife's just like, I don't understand what's wrong with you, or what exact paint or glue did you huff at one point to get you into this state? But regardless, I think there is definitely something to be said. I think outside of the nostalgia play, outside of people who are just happy to kind of remember the past, I absolutely think there is a little bit of what's going on is this fondness for a time when life wasn't, there wasn't so much feeling that we had to inject culture war stuff into movies. And unfortunately, I think that by and large, and I know there will be some people in the comments who disagree, but by and large, a lot of movies have backed away from putting in the culture war stuff. They're not putting in that much. But what they are doing is this at some point, like they can't help themselves, like an addict who just can't help but taking one more hit. Somewhere in the movie, they just sneak in some little line, some little like throwaway sentence. It really doesn't mean anything. It's not relevant to the whole movie. It doesn't matter. But it's just enough for kind of the writer to want to look at the audience and go, wink, I still, I'm still worrying about this stuff. I'm still thinking about this stuff. It's still on my mind. Don't you worry. And it's easy to blink and you miss it. But what happens is the audience, which is so fed up with all this stuff, gets triggered both directions, by the way, positively and negatively. The people who are really into maybe kind of the whatever, call out, whatever, virtue signaling, whatever was going on in the film, that they immediately jump all over Twitter and be like, confirmed, it's canon, everyone is gay, and or whatever they do. And the people who are on the other end are like, ah, damn it. It was kind of, we saw this what happened from the Miss Marvel show, a show that is, as I've said, it's a classic kind of hero's journey. It's aimed at kids. But she makes the line, oh, brown girls from Jersey don't become heroes. I don't know. It's a line that doesn't matter. It definitely doesn't matter to the film, the plot, the character, none of that. And in all reality, it's not a line that anybody should get all worked up about, but because we've had now a few years of this constant, back and forth and deluge of these kinds of comments, suddenly, people are up in arms about it. Suddenly, it's not a throwaway comment anymore. It's something that's going to make people insane, and so that's where it lands. But everybody's so trigger happy. So my theory here is, in general, movies have kind of backed away from it, but they can't help themselves by just putting a little bit in, just a tiny bit in there. And because they put a tiny bit in there, people notice it. And because people notice it, it sets the whole war off again. And we just live in this constant circle. I do think that if you look at some of the movies of kind of the early 90s through the 2002, 2004, if you look at that range, there was a healthy assortment of just dumb summer movies that were weren't trying to be anything other than blockbusters, making a ton of making a ton of money, I should say, and nothing really else. That's all they were. They weren't trying to be fancy, as they say. They were just out there to, hey, it's the summer, and you know what we do in the summer? We put on a big blockbuster movie, and then people go and watch it. And the movie is probably absolute crap, but you watch it anyway because everybody goes to the summer movies. This is this is how it worked for a very long time. You'd go to see the big summer blockbuster because you have to. When I was in high school back in 1940, that's one's for you, Mumbles. But when I was in high school, you'd go and see movies like Terminator 2. And you would, it was not, it was a fun movie, but like that was as brainy as it gets. Like, oh my God, there's a time warp factor here, and I don't know, what does this do to the space time continuum if she dies, but then he doesn't die, and the Terminator's coming back? Like, that was like deep thought movies. That was as big as it went. And I think there's a certain nostalgia and a certain fondness for just being able to go somewhere, turn on the movie, turn your brain off, and just have a good time. I think that we're missing that by and large as a society. I think there's lots of people who would like more of that, who would really appreciate just being able to watch that kind of stuff. So I think that's a lot of that, in addition to the nostalgia. That's a lot of why people are watching this stuff. So as we get to comics, and some jackass in the comments will definitely get in here with like 9 minutes and 30 seconds is when he gets to comics. Anyway, I'm joking. But when it gets to comics, I think you have something similar. A lot of comics from the 90s, from the early 2000s, they were not genius level comics. These were not all like, Watchmen level of thought-provoking, depth and complexity. They were, by and large, simple. The Image comics, the first wave, the Extreme comics, they were not. These were not brilliant comics, but what they were kind of, turn your mind off and enjoy, and and just have a good time. Those were the kind of comics they were, and I think that is that's where we're missing things. There's not enough of just being able to go and have a good time. And And so I think you see a lot of people nostalgic for like the comics of the early 90s. If they were printing those comics today, I suspect they wouldn't be super popular. And I say that partially because you have things like Spawn out there. Spawn's still being produced. Spawn's at a cheaper price, but Spawn, other than the anniversary issues and some of these other things, it's not doing massive numbers, and it should be. But the nostalgia feeling of these comics runs high, and the desire to at least get something that feels simple is hot on people's minds. But anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.